Welcome to another episode of A Pint with Shawnee Big. Good guest today. We're in Sydney, and a lot of my podcasts are sort of interviews with people who are in the middle of their lives and are kind of looking back on how they got there and trying to delve into some wisdom and provide it to you, the listeners. My guest today is somebody who is right at the epicenter of that. She has written a book called Midlife Manifesto. Her name is Jane Mathews. She is a Brit living in Sydney, and she wrote this book. When did you write it? A couple of years ago?
About a year and a half ago, yeah.
Year and a half ago. And it's slightly sexist because it's for women only. It's got a pink cover, but so there's not really much information for men in here. I don't think I'm joking. Of course, it's good for men.
Actually, but quite a few fan letters from men.
I'm joking. I did hear. Anyway, welcome to the podcast, Jane Mathews. I was joking, of course, Jane, but I did hear you saying it's for women only, and I was like, oh, well, maybe I should turn off and stop reading it. So at least I can say that's why I haven't read it. It looks like a great book. We only met 2 nights ago. I haven't had a chance to read it yet. It's subtitled A Toolkit to Plan the Rest of Your Life, which sounds interesting. You have gone into detail whenever you're asked a question about this book, about why you ended up writing it, but why not do that again here?
It's very simple, actually. I wrote it because I was looking for a book like this, which was something that would sort of give me a path of how to get through midlife, but done in a sort of witty way. And I went looking in the self-help section of the bookshops, and they're just full of either American bullshit books or just so badly written. Yeah. And I wrote the book that I wanted to read, basically. It's meant to be like you've got a friend sitting on the end of the bed talking to you about it. And I am so far from perfect. It's not saying you should do this, you should do that. It's here are some things that I've learned, and some of them will be helpful and some of them won't, and that's fine. Right. But I've had the nicest thing of all is that I've had the most amazing emails and letters from women who it seems to have resonated with, and that is, for an author, it doesn't matter whether you get 1 letter or 100 letters, it's just fantastic to have that feedback. So that's been really nice, that bits of it seem to have hit a nerve.
So the book is broken down into sort of 10 chapters, all leading up to what looks like you have to write your own midlife manifesto. Tell me what a midlife manifesto is.
It's a plan, basically, to consider the rest of your life. It doesn't have to be written down. It can just be a thing that you vaguely have in your head. You reach a time which is the middle of your life, and it could be any time, really, between 40 and 60, and it just comes about through force of circumstances. So it's little things like you can't do a seatbelt up quite as well as you could have once, or, on an aeroplane you have to let the thing out a little bit more. Yeah. Or it could be, your friends getting sick, or your children leaving home, or your looks are fading, your body's not doing what it used to do. It goes on a sort of a scale of little tiny things like, hairs growing where they've had no business growing, to, your parents dying. And when all of those things seem to come together at one time for us, and that's to me is sort of midlife. And we're all told, really, I think we're all sold the lie that the first half of our lives is going to be the best half, and the second half you're sort of on the downward hill.
I agree with that, actually.
Well, I don't. Actually,
people said to me, oh no, I'm 47 now, but people said to me, life begins at 40. I go, death begins at 40, really, because you're actually at the top of the hill looking down the other side. Well, so, I'm just more acerbic when it comes to this. And self-help books in general, I have to say. Well, so we're going to have some fun here. I like the fact that you've written a kind of a vaguely comedic self-help book.
No, it's meant to be. Every page, there should be something that
the eye rollers amongst you should probably check it out, because it's written in a kind of funny way.
It is meant to be a bit sort of self-deprecating and not super serious. There's comedy and there's humour in the darkest places, really. Yeah. But I just think we've all been told that the first half of lives is the best bit, the second half isn't. But I think the second half, unless you think about it a bit, and I don't mean you have to write a plan. Some people that is useful, some people it's not. All I'm saying is just think about it a bit and sort of have a vague idea of where you want to go and try and sort of course correct as you go along, so that you're more likely to end up somewhere that you want to be, rather than have 1 year pleating into another. Yeah. And suddenly in 5, 10, 20 years' time you go, what on earth am I doing sitting in this horrible dark little flat with no friends or whatever it is, when you think actually all I ever wanted to do was live on top of a hill in Italy surrounded by sheep with handsome young men bringing me finely sliced
wine.
Prosciutto.
Yes.
You know, so
I'm in midlife now, and I'm past midlife, I reckon, because I'm a smoker and I drink and I cane it pretty hard and have done all my life. But if I die, there's no big skin off anyone's nose. I'm not looking for sympathy there. I don't have any children or wives or ex-wives or anything. So I made a decision when I was younger to do 3 things when I was 17, and I talked about this before, I think, on a pod, but it's just like I look back on it now, I go, how the hell did I come up with that idea? And it served me really well. And it was, unfortunately, one was don't do drugs, which I didn't do, illegal drugs. Don't have children, don't get married, right? Because I just didn't like children, and I didn't really, everywhere I looked, people were just unhappily married. And like, I'm now at 47, I go, that's pretty much served me quite well, because now at this level in my life, I can kind of go, I've got money, I don't have as much expenses as a lot of my friends who've got kids with. But one of the things that happened was, as I was growing up, and you mentioned this in one of your speeches, this idea that the sort of conditioning that we've had from childhood, this whole idea that we were always taught to go through life a certain way. You had a funny line in your...
what about my daughter? It was a school opening day, and she must have been, they were young, they're like 6 or 7, and you had to write a book of story of your life. And it wasn't my daughter, but one of her friends wrote, I'm going to school, then I go to university. It was a posh school, they were all expected to go to university. Then I get married and get a job, get married, and then I die.
Have children and then die, yeah.
Yeah, have children and then die.
I know.
So that was it. So, I mean, there's a big gap between having children and dying. And so 100 years ago, women would live to 58. Now in Australia, it's 84.
Yeah.
We're all living longer. We're all living better, in theory, better quality of life longer.
Yeah.
And if you think I'm 55, I've got 30 summers to go. That's not that long if you think about 30 summers to go. I just think if you don't actually think about it a bit, and not in a sort of dark metaphysical way, but just, as I say, course correct a bit here and there, I think you just got a better chance of enjoying those 30 summers than if you don't think about it at all.
When I was growing up, there was this kind of complete disregard for the end game, particularly amongst women, where, I'm not going to say we'll marry some rich man, but there was a certain amount of that. But this idea, and some of my other friends who just don't save money, right? Particularly, we both hail from the ad business, which is a young person's game, and
we all spent all our money.
I didn't. I mean, the one thing my father and I didn't really see eye to eye on anything to do with my career, what I wanted to do in my life, but he did instill this kind of this need to have a rainy day fund, right, which I'm actually now digging into. But if I didn't have it now, my life would be extremely depressing now, because I would have to be working for the man, and I don't like working in the ad business. But in your experience, how much of that is still around, where people just sort of assume that they'll be okay
financially?
Yeah.
I think among women, I think it's shocking.
I know.
I mean, it's really, really shocking, and women more than men. And I talked to a lot of women. There were some things that really genuinely surprised me when I wrote this. One was how many people are unhappily married or unhappily with people just because they don't feel in a position strong enough to get out. In fact, that point is sort of related to the next point, which is that they're ostriches. So many women are financially just like ostriches, with their heads buried in the sand. No idea how much money they have, no idea how much money their husbands have. And it's not, we know that half of marriages end in divorce, but regardless of that, you should know how much you have. You should know how much super you have. In Australia, most women have $112,000 super when they retire. Men have about $200,000 when they retire. It's not enough. It's not even close.
No.
$1 million isn't enough now. If you want any quality of life at all, I'm really, really shocked. I think the banks have got a huge job to do.
Yeah.
All of the big four pussyfoot around it, and I've spoken to all of them, and they'll go, be great, we teach women, financial independence and all of that.
Yeah, well, they could have been saying that in 1960.
I was a bit like that when I was married, and then when I got divorced, I've taught myself.
Did you have an acrimonious divorce?
Didn't start
financially, I mean.
It didn't start out being that way, but it ended up being that way. Actually, so
hence I didn't want to get married.
Yeah, no, it's fine, but I do. In fact, I'm just doing my tax return now, and I know You can see I'm a bit old-fashioned because I actually have a
Collins
physical
notepad.
I actually have a physical...
Oh, a ledger. You've got a ledger.
I like a ledger where I write everything down. So, but I know to the penny how much money I have in super and how long I need to go on working and what I spend my money on and what I don't.
Yeah.
And, you know, I own my house. Looking back, when I was earning masses of money in advertising, I spent much more than I should have. But I saved a bit as well.
Yeah. So the book has got like the following chapters. It's rewriting your midlife story. And stop me if you want to just plow in here and cover any of these points. Your vision. What's your visceral vision? What's a visceral vision?
Without thinking about it at all,
right.
Where do you want to be in a few years' time?
There's a section on relationships, how you bring it, being a happy midlife divorcee, cementing your bond with your children and your relationship with yourself. Your body, there's a lot of stuff in here about what sort of food you eat and how you can reduce and lose weight, and there's a little bit in here about having more sex, which is good. Your spiritual self, so you talk here about your spiritual necklace. Tell me about that.
For more and more people now, and this came through very clearly in the women that I talk to, organised religion is less and less of a valid alternative, or a valid option for people. But people feel a real surge of spirituality and curiosity.
Yeah.
For whatever you call it, whether you call it spirituality or you just think about things a bit more above and beyond who we all are, and you just, or quiet time, meditation, whatever it is, I think there's a real thirst to fill that part of our lives.
Yeah.
And to me, organised religion doesn't answer it.
No.
For some people it does, which is great. So I think a lot of people choose a bead from here and a bead from there. So you might get a meditation bead from Hinduism, or a Friday night with your family bead from the Jewish people, or you might get a...
Drop the stoning. We don't really want the stoning.
Don't want the stoning,
okay.
but a little pilgrimage.
Catholic, we can use condoms,
Yeah, but I think people can pick and choose, not between the religions, but between the elements, the aspects that suit them in their life.
I'm sort of a practicing atheist, which is a thing apparently, but we all have this innate thing, and all religion is spawned out of it. So I'm hoping that in about probably about 100 years, that there's just no real organizer. It's just everyone is sort of got this thing.
It is a thing.
Yeah.
SBNR, they call it, spiritual but not religious. And a lot of people say they are SBNR, they're spiritual not religious. It seems to make lots and lots of sense to me. And I think I'm also very cynical about sort of Byron Bay Buddhists and having a dolphin in the bath. And
the problem I have with all religion, including those ones, is the hypocrisy that exists within all religion. The worst thing you can probably be called is a hypocrite, and it's in Catholicism, it's in Islam, it's in Judaism. Just this, behave this way, so the book says, or Jesus says. Meanwhile, around the corner, these people who are representing these religions are actually a completely different way.
And they put it all down to interpretation, which is nonsense. Just a simple thing to do is get hold of a children's book on world religions.
Brilliant idea.
Because it has to be written with enormous clarity.
Yeah.
And there's like the Osborne book of children's world religion. It's fantastic. It's not a very big book, but it's so interesting. You just go, oh, I never knew that. Yeah. And it's so simply explained. And
suffer little children.
Yeah.
As they said.
How...
Be nice to other people and try and be good. Number 6 is your interest in work. So you talk here about hobbies and 6 great investments of your time. What's that about? Being
interested in things means you're interesting, and I think again at this age, I think we have a huge curiosity about learning all sorts of new things about new things, and I think it pays once. I'll probably talk about podcasts.
6 great investments of your time: current affairs, technology, charity, travel, improve your vocabulary, and reading. Okay, so these are what this sounds like is just this whole idea of knowing a little about a lot. Getting interested in.
I find it shocking when people do not have a point of view on current affairs. I'm sorry.
I agree.
This is the world we live in. I just find it, when people are not engaged in that, especially in Australia, you can have a cat stuck up a tree. It's on the front page of the paper. You go to page 8 and it'll say North Korea's got nuclear weapons and they're chucking them in the sea. You just go, shit. Yeah. It's on page 10.
Well, I mean, I spent the early part of the year in America, and it was like, I watched Michael Moore's new film when it came out. It was really good. Full of humanity, but it was really funny, and it got a round of applause. But when I was leaving, it was all back in 55, 60. I was one of the youngest people there. Yeah. The issue I had then, was why aren't the kids being forced to go and see these movies? Or, because, oh, well, the kids want to go and see Daredevil or whatever. And it's like, yeah, but like this vacuosity that exists.
I know, I think it's really frightening, especially in America, actually.
Meanwhile, the world is burning. I mean, we're fiddling.
And, charity, obviously, giving back. And I don't mean being sort of all self-righteous about it, but finding something that resonates with you, I think is something that's very worthwhile. And traveling, absolutely. And reading or podcasting. I listen to more audiobooks than I read, actually.
Then you have chapter 7 is about your home. So making this is a big thing you talked about in one of your speeches, about making the space you love.
I'm particularly sensitive to it, but I really, really believe that your surroundings have a huge impact on you. I mean, a really huge impact on you. And anything from little things like buying yourself new pillows and a new doona or new sheets or something that are crunchy. So I've just got some, and my bed is like this beautiful white linen crunchy island that I fall into at night. But just for not a lot of money, you actually, I think it's very important. And I think the things that you touch every single day should be things that you like to touch or that you want to look at. And it is a time. Look at my house, full of stuff, and partly because my parents both died, so I've got like their house is in here as well.
You're going through all this stuff.
What do you do with all of that? But the things that I have around me, I do like, and it's a lovely time of your life because it doesn't matter what anyone else thinks. Actually,
You have personal style, so that's basically things like wardrobe, hair and skin, all that kind of stuff. Financial,
which I think is actually find out what you like and just stick to it.
Right. Then financial independence, so a 10-step financial blueprint on how much is enough for retirement. I always think about that as well. I mean, I have a little bit jokingly morose about how long we have left, as you said earlier. But, do I have enough to last me for the next 10 years? Yeah. Do I have enough to last me for the 10 years after that? Probably. Do I have enough to last me the 10 years after that? Probably not.
Yeah,
Am I going to last that long? Probably not. What if I do? I don't know. Maybe assisted suicide in Zurich? I don't know, I'm joking. But
well, I'm probably on the same trajectory.
Yeah. And the last piece is your Midlife Manifesto. So you gather all of the little tidbits and wisdom and then plan your own way of moving forward. Is that the idea?
And there's a plan there to help you if that's what rocks your boat. If you actually want to write it down, you can. The idea of the plan is that it can be very overwhelming. So if you break it down, you can notch a bit off here and there and sort of head towards it. And even if you just do one thing a day that pushes you in that direction, life is just one choice you make after another. That's all it is. So
I did a documentary in America on the collapsing middle class there. It was called 1 in 3, and basically one of the questions I wanted to ask you about this book, 1 in 3 women in America are one step away from being out of a home, or are struggling to make ends meet, don't have money to buy freshly twilled linens and pillows and all that kind of stuff. What do you say to the people who are really struggling in life, women who are in their midlife? Quite a lot of the things that we're talking about are so much down a wish list. The area that they're looking at right now is more about putting food on plates and stuff. Is there anything you have for them?
I think actually everything that I've done is completely relevant to them. And it isn't about, going to Bali and buying white linen sheets. It's about little things in your life. I completely understand what you're saying, but it's interesting though.
So it's not elitist, this book, is what you're saying.
Not at all.
Right, good. Okay.
Absolutely not.
It certainly tonally doesn't feel elitist.
No, it's
very
meant to be
conversation, as you said, a friend at the end of the bed,
and sort of self-deprecating. I really don't know the answers.
The women that I was interviewing were, doing really stupid things. Like they would go, oh well, I have to go to Starbucks every day, and I bring my computer and I look for work there, and I know it's a $5 coffee, and they have kids at home, and they're bankrupt basically.
Yeah, $5 buys you a pizza, a family pizza in America.
I know.
As I said, you make choices, which isn't to say that one Starbucks a week, if it really lifts your spirits,
sure,
go for it. Which is why in the recession, lipsticks have sold really well.
Yes.
In the GFC,
small treats.
Lipsticks.
They were talking about things
went
like
off the scale.
the sneaker situation. Because you can buy cheap sneakers, but if your kid is wearing them in school, he's just all this stuff I never even thought about. But it's just really hard.
When Oprah was here She did one of her tours, which is all about, her line is, you're being your best self. And now that's even, rather than having self-help books, it actually is like, be your best self. It's like, that's what the section's called, or self-development. And I feel embarrassed even being in that section in the bookshop. I feel embarrassed even browsing it on Amazon, because I feel very self-conscious about it. You feel slightly a failure and a bit needy.
Yes, I agree.
Being there, it's like, I don't really need that. I went on one of Oprah's shows here, and I thought it was very interesting because it's sold out, almost. But the seats that sold the quickest were the cheapest seats and the most expensive. Yes. So I just think that's quite interesting, because I think there is a lot of
There's
people...
no middle class.
It's a lot of people who really want a touch of her fairy dust on their lives for $75 with the cheapest seats, or $100 with the cheapest seats, and then, I don't even know, $5,000 for the most expensive ones where you get a photo with her or something. A lot of people who don't have a lot of money are aware that they can turn their lives around, but it's much harder. But it is possible to do, and I think Oprah, whether you love her or hate her, and I love her and hate her,
I'm about like that.
She came from nothing, and she's done extremely well. So it's a very powerful story. There's also a little bit of condescension in there that I find a little unsettles me a bit. But no,
she's kind of like a nice Donald Trump. She did come from. Where did you come from?
I came from a bucolic, swan-filled River Thames. Wordsworthian, between Oxford and London.
Ivy Cottage.
Sort of Roses, actually.
Father vicar.
No, it's not vicar. He worked in marketing. But it was covered in roses. Georgian house, all that. Right. But life never turns out how you think it will. My sister died when she was 32, and both my parents died and got divorced, and things.
Was it just you and your sister?
Yeah.
Oh no.
So I don't have any immediate family left. I mean, it's not poor Jane at all. Jane's fine, and I've got 2 great kids. Life is never what it seems. Everyone has their own things that they go through. And when my mother died, it was exactly the same time that my husband had left me, and I had to get a job at 53. I hadn't worked for 8 years, and stuff was arriving from England, and people were after my mother's. Some distant relations kind of went after the estate,
money,
and and it was, everything always happens at once. So I've been incredibly lucky in many ways in my life, but life it isn't always perfect, and that's something else. When I was talking to all these women, there are women who you think have got everything. It doesn't. It's not a straight line like that. It just isn't. And it's not to say that they don't have an easier time than people who haven't got any money. Bloody oath, absolutely, they have a much easier time. I work with this charity Oz Harvest, which is food rescue. So it's a great idea. So we pick up food that would otherwise be thrown away and take it to people who need it and eat it and want it.
Brilliant.
You come across, you just think there, but for the grace of God. I mean, the good thing about working with Oz Harvest is you realise how close we all are to. It's a very thin line between living here, as I am, and you fall under the line, and it can be one or two things. It can be losing your job, can't pay the mortgage, and suddenly things just don't go right for people.
I mean, part of it is our core business, if you like, which is advertising. I mean, I look back a little bit guiltily on some of this stuff because we're the propagators of credit cards, we're the propagators of greed, desire, all those things, pushing things on people that they don't really need. And yet we seem to be able to go home and sleep like a baby.
I don't know. I loved advertising. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah.
I'm still knocking about the periphery of it, but I never felt that I did sort of act that way. I mean, maybe I did, but
no, I think we have to take, not personal maybe, but we have to take collective responsibility for the fact that we're the pimps of consumerism. But our business is built around telling falsehood, massaging the truth, putting people's expectations on beauty, body image, all that. Yes, that's us. There's no one else to. Maybe the public relations business and us, but we're brother and sister. I guess the guy and girl who go and work in the cigarette factory every day come home and probably don't smoke and go, well, we make cigarettes that kill people, whatever. I still need to put bread on the table. But it's, again, going back to hypocrisy, it's slightly hypocritical because I spent over 25 years in the business and did my fair share of what I'm now complaining about. And it's very right on of me to be doing this.
I don't know. I have to say, I see your point, but I sleep just fine.
Yeah, no, I don't. I sleep pretty well.
When I was flogging cornflakes,
I sleep as well. I sleep.
Okay.
This book came out of you being in the position that you are writing the book for people, right? So did you manage to go through this sort of yourself and come up with your own manifesto? And if so, what are some of the points that you came to?
I think I've got in there, actually, I've got the things that I learned, actually, the things that I learned from writing the book. Actually, one of the things that it was interesting writing, I mean, I actually don't believe in the phrase midlife crisis. I think it's been bleached of meaning by overuse. It's just kind of, it's just such an easy hook to hang things on. But
what if I'm suddenly driving a Porsche and I've just pierced my fat belly button and I've got an 18-year-old model and I'm spiking my hair and I'm 53?
And classic male menopause. I mean, classic male. Women don't, joking aside, for men it's when they turn 40, when they turn 45, when they turn 50. And it's to do with an age, literally changing an age break, a demographic age break is when it happens to men. They think about their physical appearance and sexuality and they think about how attractive they are and they think about their goals and whether they've reached their goals at that time in their life.
And women never do that.
No, we don't do it. We don't do it as... It doesn't go bang, bang, bang like that. It's much more subtle.
A 55-year-old woman... a pigeonholed 55-year-old who's got a few bob and a 55-year-old man who's got a few bob. That woman is going to be spending 3,000% more on her body than that man is. Clothes, makeup, depilations,
not necessarily.
Botox.
I don't think necessarily. For men, I think I mean, maybe you're right, but I think it creeps up on you.
Most 53-year-old men have let themselves go years ago. They're big fat beer belly guys.
Well, a lot of women do too.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not. I think it depends on the person.
I suppose it depends on how much money you have at the end of the day.
I was just looking at here the things that I learned from writing the book. It's never too late to change what you do. Act the way you want to feel. The importance of self-reliance and taking responsibility, because you can't drag along your
advertising past
bitterness about things that have happened to you in the past, because shit happens, and if you carry it around with you, it makes you a miserable person. And a friend of mine refers to his ex-wife as the witch, and he said that if he was in a car and she was on the side of the road, he would run her over, and he'd go to jail for it, and he wouldn't mind.
That's nice.
But talk about making him unattractive.
The thing to say, to say to him is, well, mate, you married her and you told her you loved her once. The whole idea of love is, I don't know whether that's in there or not, but this whole idea I find with women, they and this is, again, I'm sure men are just as bad at it, but it really gets up my goat. Women are very quick to say I love you, and Irish people were very kind of, whatever, you're good, you're cool, you're pretty cool too, it's like we kind of have this difficulty, particularly Irish men, in saying it. But like when people get divorced and they go, I never loved him, and I go, you told him you did. And to me, like, you say you love someone, it's like you should love them forever. Less. It should be a lot just, it's sort of throwaway. And, now I don't love you. I fell out of love with you. I used to love you, but I'm not in love with you. Yeah. And there's a whole little vernacular that goes on around it. And it just, to me, removes the potency.
I mean, I think the thing about relationships is, like Woody Allen says, if you don't, like a shark, if they don't move forward, they die.
Yeah.
And if you don't work at a relationship, it will, no question about it. And in midlife, you have to work a bit harder. And, the thought of date night just completely does my head in, because it's so contrived. But the thought of actually consciously making sure that you do spend time together. And my husband and I were just like parallel train tracks, and neither of us, we could see it happening. Neither of us made an effort to creep in towards the middle. And I think if you don't work at it, then
I'm just about able to do date night because I treat it as kind of ironic, I kind of, this is so corny, I'll go along with it.
I mean, but it's good to spend time alone together and do a thing. And as I said, the other thing in there, is sex. Absolutely, have more sex, have as much sex as you possibly can. Do it in every room in the house. Do it on the table.
Which older women are better at usually than
more confidence and know what you want and everything. Although it's harder in a new relationship because you just go, oh my God, nothing is where it used to be. That you feel more self-conscious. But if you're in a longer term relationship, absolutely you're better. That's your best sex you've ever had is in midlife. But
I think part of that as well is because a lot of certainly, I don't know about the numbers on this, but anecdotally a lot of the women that I know who have been married and are divorced, again I'm going to use a word that will probably have raining down arrows on me, but there's a certain part of this whole thing to do with needing to have a child, right? So being actually programmed, the female body, to have a child, and the sort of urgency that surrounds that, and the need to find a man who will give me a child and who will provide for my children and all this kind of stuff. And in order to get that man, then certain things have to be done, certain things have to be said, and certain things that, so I'm giving a slightly jaundiced view on love and marriage and relationships, but I see it a lot. I see women coming out at 40 with 3 kids or 4 kids going, I never loved the guy, and it's kind of sad. I mean, it's sad for both parties, and the kids, but I think it happens a lot, and I find it. I have had a few loves in my life, and I'm still in love with them all, and I'm still friends with them all. I'm not banging them, but if they're in trouble, they can call me, and I'll do my best to help. And 2 of them are married, and that to me is much more meaningful for me personally than this, like your friend saying he's going to run over his ex-wife, or this kind of huge viciousness that sort of goes on.
I know, and it's
it's
like
to do with money, I think.
It is to do with money, and it's sort of it is like a dark shadow that he carries around with him. It's and it's not good to be with, because he it doesn't make him attractive. I don't mean
to other women, because they'll feel it. Yeah, absolutely.
You
they
do.
Can smell that.
You do, and I mean, I think you teach people how to treat you.
I agree.
And
this is a part of one's life that can be depressing because of all the things you mentioned earlier.
Yeah, and
you're kind of bringing a cheery kind of, hey, it's not the end of the world, but the end of the world is coming. So what happens then?
Don't get me wrong. I mean, in the book there are. I recognise that completely. There are days when you just want to curl up and cry because you've missed opportunity. Life hasn't gone your way. Things are not where you wish they were.
Is there a book in how to deal with the end of life manifesto? Is there a way to look at that, or I'm with you on this whole self-help thing, and yet there is this whole part of life that we kind of brush under the carpet, which is in homes, and people just it's just hard to deal with that.
No, very hard to deal with that.
And you've had to deal with it.
I have, but no, I haven't put my mind to that yet. But the whole assisted dying thing, which I know there's been a lot of publicity about that recently. In a book in Australia with what's his name, Richard, what's his name. Has written a book about exactly this subject and assisted dying, and I'm very pro that. And he wrote because his father, they wouldn't help him die, and he had a miserable, painful, awful death. And there's a woman.
I talked to my old man about that. Actually, he's 80, and he said, "No, don't unplug anything. Keep me." No matter how bad it gets,
personal, private.
So I was surprised at that, but I mean, I would be the.
I'd be the opposite, but it's a very.
I think in about 20 years' time, that'll be fine. Everyone will be able to do it. It's just it's one of those throwback laws that just is it's actually God driven. It's a morality driven law.
It is. No, it's completely. My mother had dementia when she died, which in a way is incredibly cruel to the people who are watching it. And witnessing it, but actually very, very sort of calm and peaceful in a way to the person who has it, because she had absolutely no idea what she was saying or doing or who I was, or but it was also a little bit frightening sometimes, I think, when every so often she'd know that she was losing her grip on reality and on life and things. I talk about death in there because it's brushes all of us. And
do you have anything in here about writing a will?
I do. It's in the financial chapter.
Because that, to me, is something that I have started doing, and the amount of stuff, and I've got a fairly simple life, but the amount of stuff that someone, if I suddenly die, would have to try and find out about.
No, I'm, again, you know, I was ostrich woman before that, and I call it a 10-point plan. It's only because there are 10 things, like one is get all your paperwork in order, all your documents in order, which includes someone should know all your passwords, all your financial stuff in one place, absolutely having a will.
Yeah. We've crept stealthily into an online existence.
Yeah.
And so, you know, your point about the passwords, but also, you know, we don't necessarily have bank statements anymore. We don't necessarily have a little book somewhere with a ledger, and, you know, you do, but I mean, but, you know, I was just astonished. And also then there's this bit of the clarity on how, you know, you just said that your mother's estate was thrown into question, or people tried to hijack it. You've got to be very careful how you word something.
Yeah.
You know?
No, you have to make it. I mean, you really have to think about the people who have to walk into it, or make it as easy as possible for the next person coming to do it. I mean, you were asking about what I'm doing. I mean, I've been asked to do workshops around this because it would lend itself really well to a workshop. But also a way, you know, it is meant to be sort of fun and, you know, make people walk out of there feeling good. But the next book I'm writing is called How to Live Alone. Okay. Because a quarter of Australians, a third of Americans live alone. And it's the fastest growing segment of the population by far.
The numbers are scary.
The numbers are huge. I mean, really huge. And
what about the psychology thing? In most of the developed world, that's the gun everyone reaches for when they're in trouble, and I know it's important for a lot of people, but it seems to me like just living in America, everyone has their own sort of shrink. Yeah,
I mean, you'd be much more sensitive to that than I am, because I live here and people don't.
Right.
I mean, they do when
so it's still just, it hasn't spread.
No, they do when they have an issue that needs to be resolved, and I talk about it in there, like depression and things, and most people I know have been brushed by depression to some degree, whether it's a brush on their arm, or whether it's kind of
part of life to be
fully
depressed sometimes.
It is a bit, actually, and I think you have to. J.K. Rowling actually said that rock bottom was the foundation of her success, because she actually couldn't go any lower, and she just built on that. There's a time when you need to go and seek professional help, but there's also trying to help yourself, and I don't mean in a Pollyanna-ish way, but actually, and you know, it's a bit like the book I'm writing at the moment about how to live alone. If you look on the internet, you know, what to do when you're lonely, it says buy a dog, you know, go for a walk, ring a friend, you know.
But you're actually on the internet.
It's incredibly patronising.
Use me.
It's incredibly patronising advice, you know.
Well, I did some work on depression, and the last thing you can do is say, just pull yourself together, have a cup of tea. I know.
And I used to be a pull yourself together person, and now I'm so not, and I'm so sympathetic with people who are going through those difficulties, because it's not, it doesn't matter. It's horrible, but then by the same token, and I know that drugs have their place, I think there's a lot of other options that could and should be pursued before. Drugs is not the only answer. It can be the answer, but it's not the only answer. And I've seen people on antidepressants, and you know, it's not always a great outcome. It takes a long time to get off them, and you know. And I think, but I'm also not of the, you know, buy yourself a dog, ring a friend. You know,
I know.
You know, I've got a dog. You know, he's got 4 legs, not 2. You know, I don't sleep with him. I don't talk to him. It's a dog. You know, and it's like when you ring a friend. I remember just after I got divorced, I rang a friend, and because I was feeling a bit miserable, and she was like, I can't talk right now because I'm having a dinner party, I've got these friends coming over, and I just, you know, and I put down the phone and feel, you know, worse. So, you know, oh, you're having all those people over without me.
Lean cuisine microwave meal for
wasn't quite
I'm joking.
But it was all coupled, you know, and you suddenly feel like I'm in part of a different club now.
Do you think Sydney is a great place to be when you're in your midlife?
It is. It's probably too great a place to be, really, in that it's incredibly easy and comfortable, and you know, it's easy to make friends. I've got heaps of friends here, so I mean, I wouldn't go back to England because I've got more friends here than I do in England. I mean, it's a very expensive city. Don't get me wrong; it's incredibly expensive.
And my observation back this time, becoming a nanny state, and just. And by the way, the people who are making all these rules are our generation, the midlife people.
It's
we're going down with that sort of thing.
It's incredibly nanny state. It's terrible. Really nanny state.
Yeah. I don't know whether you can come back from that.
But the weather's beautiful, and and there's lots to do. It's a beautiful city, so it's sort of like a sexy old boyfriend. It's really hard to give him up.
Yeah, I agree. That's how I look at it, except it's a girlfriend. Jane Mathews, thank you for coming on A Pint with Shawnee B. Your book is launching in America soon.
It is on Amazon.
So good luck with that. Anybody who is listening to this, the name of the book is Midlife Manifesto, Dream It, Plan It, Live It. A toolkit to plan the rest of your life. The author's name again, Jane Mathews. Jane, thank you for coming on the show.
You're welcome. Thank you.